Welcome to the Eat This Book podcast. I'm Michael Whitworth. Each day we take a small piece of scripture and we sit with it. Not a quick snack that disappears before lunch, not a chore you check off of a list, but rather a meal meant to be savored. So pull up a chair. Let's eat. In 1927, Charles Lindbergh landed in Paris after the first solo transatlantic flight. The world celebrated, and rightly so. The courage, the endurance, the sheer audacity of crossing an ocean alone in a single-engine monoplane, but no one confused Lindbergh with the engineers who built the Spirit of St. Louis. He flew the plane. They designed it. His achievement was extraordinary, but it existed within a framework someone else had created. The pilot was faithful to the mission. The builder had made the mission possible. The writer of Hebrews is about to make a comparison that would have sent shockwaves through his Jewish audience. He's going to set the Son alongside Moses, the most revered figure in Israel's history, and show that the difference between them is not degree, but kind. One was the faithful pilot, the other built the plane. Therefore, holy brothers, you who share in a heavenly calling, consider Jesus, the apostle and high priest of our confession, who was faithful to him who appointed him, just as Moses also was faithful in all God's house. The opening word, therefore, reaches back through everything the writer has established. The Son is God's final word, the radiance of his glory, the pioneer of salvation, the merciful high priest who partook of flesh and blood. Therefore, because of all that, consider him. The Greek term means more than a passing glance. It means to fix your attention, to examine carefully, to give sustained, deliberate thought. The writer isn't asking for a moment of admiration. He's asking for a reorientation of focus. And the titles are striking. Jesus is called apostle, the only time this word is applied to him in the entire New Testament. An apostle is one who is sent, a commissioned representative carrying the full authority of the sender. Combined with high priest, the title seated in chapter 2, you get the complete picture. The Son is both the one sent from God to humanity and the one who stands before God on humanity's behalf. He moves in both directions. No other figure in Scripture holds both titles simultaneously. Then the comparison begins, and the writer handles it with remarkable care. He doesn't attack Moses. He doesn't diminish him. He honors him. Moses was faithful in all God's house. He uses language drawn directly from Numbers 12, verse 7, where God himself commends Moses against the complaints of Aaron and Miriam. This is God's own testimony about Moses. The writer quotes it because he wants his audience to know that what follows is not a demotion of their hero. It's a clarification of categories. Moses was faithful in the house. Jesus was faithful over the house. The preposition is everything. In, of course, means within, as a member, as one who serves inside an existing structure. Over means authority, ownership, responsibility for the whole. A steward is faithful in the household. A son is faithful over it. Both are faithful, but the roles are fundamentally different. And the writer makes the distinction explicit with an analogy that reaches back to episode 95. For Jesus has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses, as much more glory as the builder of a house has more honor than the house itself. Moses was part of the purpose, a magnificent part, the most faithful servant Israel ever knew, but the Son built the house. He designed the structure Moses served in, the covenant, the law, the tabernacle, the priesthood. The entire framework of Israel's worship was the Son's architecture. Moses administered it faithfully, but the architect always outranks the administrator, no matter how exceptional the administrator is. Then the writer adds a parenthetical that expands the frame to cosmic proportions. For every house is built by someone, and the builder of all things is God. The argument moves seamlessly from the house of Israel to the house of everything. The Son who built the covenant house is the same one who built the universe. And if that's true, then his glory exceeds Moses's the way a creator's glory exceeds a creature's. Not by a margin, but by a category. But the most pastorally charged moment comes in how the writer describes Moses' role. Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant to testify to the things that were to be spoken later. a servant. The Greek therapōn is not the common word for slave. It carries dignity, honor, a sense of trusted attendant. Moses was no mere employee. He was God's trusted man in the house, but his role was testimonial. He pointed forward. His ministry was a living preview of something that hadn't arrived yet. The law, the sacrifices, the tabernacle, all of it was a testimony to things that were to be spoken later. Moses' entire career, as magnificent as it was, had a built-in forward arrow. It was never the destination, it was the sign pointing to the destination. But Christ is faithful over God's house as a son. Not as a servant, a son. The son doesn't point forward to something better. The son is the something better. The son doesn't testify to coming realities. The son is the reality the testimony was about. Everything Moses built and administered and faithfully maintained was a sketch. The son is the finished portrait. And then the writer turns the whole comparison toward his audience. And we are his house if indeed we hold fast our confidence and our boasting in hope. We are his house, not the tabernacle, not the temple, not a building made of stone or acacia wood. The people of God are the house of God. The son is not faithful over a structure, he is faithful over a people. And that community, fragile, pressured, tempted to drift, that community is the house the son built and the house the son leads. But there's a conditional clause, and the writer doesn't soften it, if indeed we hold fast. The house is real. The son's faithfulness over it is secure, but belonging to the house requires endurance, confidence maintained, hope not abandoned. This is not a threat designed to terrify, it's a description of what genuine participation looks like. A house is made of materials that stay in place. A community of faith is made of people who hold fast. Here's what I think we should savor from this passage. First, Moses was faithful, and he was not enough. Honoring Moses doesn't require pretending he was the final word. He was a servant, and the greatest thing about his service was that it pointed beyond itself. The law was a testimony. The tabernacle was a preview. The whole Mosaic system was a finger pointing at a face that hadn't yet appeared. Second, the builder outranks the building. This is not about diminishing the Old Testament. It's about understanding its architecture. The covenant Moses administered was designed by the Son. Returning to it while bypassing the Son would be like praising a building while ignoring the architect who is standing in the room. Third, we are the house. The Son's faithfulness is not exercised over a distant structure. It's exercised over you, a living community, a people held together by shared confession and sustained hope. The house is not something you visit. It's something you are. If you've built your faith primarily on rules, systems, or religious structures, and those structures have started to feel like all there is, this passage gently lifts your gaze. The structures were never the point. They were the servant's testimony, pointing forward. The Son is what they were pointing to. Let your faith land on the person, not the framework. If you revere your tradition, its history, its liturgy, its rhythms, this passage doesn't ask you to abandon it. Moses was honored, not discarded. But tradition is the house, and the Son is over the house. Hold your tradition with open hands and your gaze fixed on the one it was built to serve. If you're struggling to hold fast, if your confidence is shaking and hope feels more like a word than a reality, the writer doesn't pretend that's not happening. He names it. Holding fast is the mark of the house. But notice, the security doesn't rest on the strength of your grip. It rests on the faithfulness of the Son over the house. Your job is to keep holding. His job is to keep building. He is better at his job than you are at yours. If you feel like a small part of a very large story, unremarkable, easily overlooked, not Moses-level faithful, this passage says you are the house, not a visitor, not a spectator, the material the Son is building with, the community he exercises his faithfulness over. Smallness in the house is still membership in the house. If you've been drifting, if the warnings of chapter 2 landed close to home, this passage offers the antidote. Consider Jesus. Fix your attention. Not a glance, not a nod of acknowledgement, but the sustained, careful gaze of someone who knows that everything depends on what they're looking at. The writer's prescription for drift is not effort, it's focus. Next time on Eat This Book, hearts rarely harden all at once. Hebrews takes us back to the wilderness to show how drift becomes rebellion and why one word matters more than any other. Today, join me again in Hebrews 3 as we hear the Spirit's warning while there's still time to respond. Thanks for reading with me. Until next time, may the Word dwell in you richly.